Kyle, thank you for being here today. I really do appreciate it. I know you're a busy, busy guy between, writing all your books. By the way, I did get your book, and
Mm,
I would recommend this book, just like I would recommend Hamza Shambari's book. But this book is fantastic. I mean, it kind of covers the gamut of no BS project management, right?
yeah. Yeah, it's about 10 years worth of uh, experience in construction and project management and leadership, kind of unpacked lessons and all put into a book that hopefully people can take and use as a guide.
Yeah, well, if more people would read these days, that would be a good one. That would be a good one for any project manager to have in his back pocket at any point in time. So I will
Yeah.
definitely endorse the book. I thought it was a fantastic instructional, full of really usable content.
Yeah.
So the reason that kind of we came on here, you did a post a while back about the build of the Empire State Building. And
Yeah.
I thought it was fascinating. I've always been fascinated by that building. Actually, my wife and I got engaged in that building. So
Wow.
yeah, it's kind of a special place for me. And I remember going through it and seeing all the pictures and all the, if you go through the building itself, it has a kind of a history of who built it and who were the project managers in charge. And there was not a lot of kind of top heavy administrative areas there. There was just a few folks that were running that project. And then you pointed out in your post that these were lean principles being kind of put into place before lean was even defined, or I don't even know if it had an inkling of anybody that was kind of pushing toward it. So
Yeah.
tell me more about how you got into it.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, I've been doing construction for like a little over 12 years now, and my lean journey started probably about 5 years ago, where I started uncovering lean construction and these principles about just operating better, being more efficient, minimizing waste, something that I was very familiar with in my time in construction. So once I started looking into that, I started learning about these principles, and then kind of adjacently, I uncovered this story from a different source. Just it was like a different newsletter actually that I was reading about the story of the Empire State Building. I started reading into it and I said, oh, wow, there's some overlap here. Um, and then come to find out, a lot of other lean enthusiasts have actually touched on the topic of the Empire State Building. It's been an example for that. I later came to find that out, but I started seeing the overlap there, and some of these like overlapping principles and methods that were being used. And yeah, it was like 25 or 50, maybe 50 years before lean was ever formalized officially. So I thought that was really interesting, and I kind of went through the story, and there's like an entire book written about the Empire State Building build, lots of stuff online about it, and started kind of tying together and kind of piece together, a dozen things that were really cool that they did, um, just because it was kind of common sense, and they had this serious mission in mind and really clear goal, which is kind of one of a lean principle, and they organize themselves in a way to achieve it, doing things as efficiently as possible. And yeah, that's how I came to be introduced to it. And I guess we can start unpacking that here.
Yeah, I thought the thing that struck me the most, I was reading up about the things, and they were delivering steel that was still hot from the foundry. You couldn't touch it with your hands. You had to have, a set of gloves or, whatever to kind of, get it off the truck.
Yeah.
Um, and to me, that struck me as the most amazing thing. And I think part of that has a big deal to do with it, because we talk about industry today and we talk about supply chain and being able to get materials and lead times and doing all these things. Well, there it seemed like the perfect storm of, okay, like you said, we have a clear goal. of what we're trying to accomplish, and we have a clear set of vendors, people who are going to be, in line with this whole idea, and so therefore we can move that forward. I don't see that in the industry today. It is what's your thought about that? Is it, because it's an impediment for sure.
Yes. So yeah, you're right. I don't see a lot of that too. A lot of this was, and it was pointed out many times in the comments of that post, um, that there was a cultural thing going on at that time, right? There was, we were coming out of the Great Depression at that time. The workforce was super hungry. They were coming like right out of not working forever. So they were kind of probably really grateful for the opportunity to have the opportunity to work. Um, and then there was this big goal with the Empire State Group, where they were like, "Hey, we're opening on," I can't remember the exact date, May 31st, 1931. Period. We are on a race right now to build the tallest building in the world. Okay, so they had this gripping and compelling vision for not only just the architect and the engineers, but all the way down to the iron workers, all the way down to the suppliers, all the way down through this. And there was this cultural power that was driving this mission. So that is a great thing. And that in itself is a lean principle as well, which is why it's so important. And a lot of people do talk about it, but one of the principles is respect for people. Um, and that essentially is building a culture where there's respect inside of it. Um, and the principle there is winning over the workforce. That's what a lot of people talk about that today. Jason Schroeder being one of them. I hear him talk about that a lot. Winning over the workforce. That is so important, and it's something that's not really done well today. You today you see a lot of top-down directives, a lot of you work for me, um, a lot of bureaucracy, um, a lot of lawyers and people that are in the mix. They didn't have all that. That was all stripped away back in that time. There was no bureaucracy. There was no heavy overhead, lawyers and stuff there's no major like uh what like silos of that nature, that we see today.
Right.
That was all stripped
Yeah.
away, and it was just the mission. It was just the mission, and it was just the workforce was won over, and people were ready to get after it.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting too. The mayor, was it the mayor of New York, or the current, or the governor of New York? I can't remember. I need to look it up, but to be correct, but he was part of the investment group, and so they were able to, again, that bureaucracy that we're talking about, that was non-existent then, right? Because they kind of opened the floodgates and said, we need to get this built. This is how we're going to build it. There wasn't a lot of
Yep.
people in the way at City Hall saying no, because yes, there was one sense of purpose, which was we want to build, we want to still show the greatness of America, because they were directly in the throes of the Great Depression. Right, the stock market crash happened in was that a late August or November of 29,
Yep.
uh, or 30. Yeah, so it was definitely a hard time. I think when you and I kind of started talking about this a little bit, I kind of posted about there was also a different mindset, um, of the people, and I think that goes to that, respect for people. Like, people took their job very, very seriously. Maybe because, yeah, they were grateful to have one, but they also took pride in the workmanship, and then that was one of the things that I noticed when I was there. No
Yeah.
matter no matter what anybody says, they built that thing in a year and what, a month and a half or something like that, under budget, under schedule. But still, it is a beautiful building, and the work that is inside of that building that has stood the test of time is still fantastic to this day. If you go in and look at the craftsmanship and the
Hmm.
artistry that it took, and I think I mentioned it too, is it, not to mention the fact, the absolute guts it takes to get out there and walk the steel, 1,000 feet up. you
Yeah.
know, these, it's almost superhuman. And like I said, like I look at it this way. I When I was a younger man, yes, I could walk, the third story or the fourth story steel, and I would be like, okay, I'm okay with this. I wasn't great with it, but I was, it was like I had a friend of mine, old Jimmy Coaches used to say, he goes, well, it's mind over matter. If you don't mind, it don't matter. So you
I
have
love
to
that.
have a whole, yeah, you have to have a whole different mindset about, hey, we got to get the job done. So guess what? I got to walk that steel.
Yeah.
And if you have not been there, if you have not done that, and you have not been a part of that, that is a whole different culture that most people just don't understand. So,
Hmm.
yeah, kind of to your point, the culture, the attitude, what it takes to do this kind of work, um, is just essentially different, than anything I've ever experienced in my life. I've worked in the offices. There's no today. When I'm working in the office, there's no scary feeling that there's death is imminent. so,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean it's just totally different. For me now, I know a lot of people posted, and I wanted to kind of get your take on it. A lot of people, well, 5 people died in building it, so I guess that's the reason why it was so fast. And I totally disagree. There's always risk, when you build. Safety was not the same, correct? That's true, but I don't know that it makes you build any faster if you have a harness on or you don't, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I said, if you've never been 50 feet in the air or 100 feet in the air on steel, I don't care if you got a harness on or not. It's scary,
Oh yeah. Oh
right?
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know that. I don't know all the anecdotes of the deaths and how they happen, but you know, with that mindset and if you have safety as a priority, like I'm thinking if we did that today, I don't know for sure if that would slow you down or if that would put a little another bottleneck in the system. I don't know, but with the culture and with the mindset, I think those things can be overcome, and there are ways and um, through planning to possibly do this, achieve the same outcome, with today's safety. But not an expert on that, so yeah, that
Okay.
was a common point in the comments. I was
A
hearing that
lot,
a
yeah, a
lot.
lot,
So
and a lot of people want to point that out. And like, I'm a safety first guy. Gravity has an ill effect on everybody. It really does. And so you've got to be, cognizant of it. You've got to take measures to keep people safe. In that time, I'm sure they did what they could, or felt they did what they could. I don't know that it was a get in here and work, and if you die, we don't care. I don't know if that culture truly exists, because I've been, you know, I've been in that work before, and I don't know anybody that says, "Hey, if you die, I really don't care." Never met anybody like that. I don't know that that even existed back then. So
yeah.
I felt as though there's some short sightedness there. But I wanted to go into that. I want to talk about another concept of lean, which was flow,
Hmm.
because that is something that was truly expressed in that build, right? You've got, and I'm not an expert in lean, you are, so I'll let you you know, kind of address that, and tell me your thoughts on that, because they had flow. They were building up to, they started out at building almost 4 stories at one week. They did like 14 stories at in a week. It was crazy,
Yeah,
and that's flow as far as I understand it. So I wanted you to kind of tell me your thoughts on that.
that is, yeah. So Empire State was a prime example of flow. They, as the story goes, the lead superintendent, he orchestrated a train of trades. Okay. He orchestrated 60 plus major trades and put them into streams of work. And there was a leader of each stream, and the guy that everyone that was following the next person knew where they needed to be, when and where. So it was very methodical the way that they did it. They took their footprint, They looked at the space, they looked at time, and they used a time by location schedule, which was beautiful. And it's starting to come back now in today's um, building environment with TAC planning and stuff, the rise of that from really that, and that's brought from manufacturing. Um, that's coming back, and they use that. So they didn't use a critical path schedule, a longest path schedule like the standard is right now in construction. Um, they use the time by location schedule, and there's pictures of it online. It's great. And it shows where every trade needs to be on floor by floor by floor. And that's what they did. They prioritized the flow. They kept the pace. They kept the steadiness of that. And that is how we build projects fast. It's kind of counterintuitive because the gut instinct is to push, 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 rush, 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 get thing, frame that as fast as you can, hang that drywall as fast as you can. But that's it doesn't work like that. That's how we run into problems. That's how we run into bottlenecks. If you can't even begin to see where your bottleneck is by looking at a 12-page CPM schedule, you can see it when you take time and location and map out a train of trades. That's where you can
Yeah.
see where your bottlenecks are, and that's what they did there.
Yeah,
And
and
so,
you
yeah,
know, yeah, using those CPM methods and that kind of that waterfall technique. I mean, if you started to, and this is one of the things where I agree with you, if you started to put your trades into those boxes in that waterfall technique, you'll start to see where, well, wait a minute, I can't put that trade in there at that same time because that's not going to work, right? You start to see that, but again, you can't see it just from looking at the Gantt chart and going, well, is it there? That looks good. The Gantt chart looks good. It's almost like that. It looks good from my house, kind of.
it looks great, pretty on schedule.
It's
It looks
pretty,
good to
yeah.
the board of advisors,
Sure.
but
I mean, I
yeah.
think the Gantt chart or the critical path method uh, leads to it gives the upper echelon of folks the good idea that okay, we've got a plan in place, right? It gives them the warm fuzzies. We've got a plan in place, so let's run with it. But I wanted to kind of address that too, because my business, we're in the tech side of things. Like, AO Mobile is a time and productivity tracking software. And what we do, here is kind of to measure those small increments. But I wonder, and I was going to, try to talk to you about this, is technology, is it focusing more on one side of project management methodology rather than another? So, would technology lean better if it were trying to work in that kind of flow state, or would technology be better to kind of focus on that CPM? I feel like it's focused on CPM methods, and maybe we really need to make a shift and let technology look at maybe get a break away from that and go, hey, we want to talk about how to get flow and use technology to get flow. And I kind of wanted to throw that at you and see what you thought.
Yes, yeah, I 100% agree. It starts with, okay, so it starts with the philosophy and the principles. And if we're basing our principles off of traditional like CPM stuff, then I think we're kind of broken from the start because it's not based off production principles. It's not based off of principles that are borrowed from manufacturing, operations science, um, bottlenecks, theory of constraints, these types of philosophies. If we can use our tools and technology and base them off the right set of principles, then we can leverage them and probably get more out of them. So yeah, it's all about the right fundamentals first, and then we can use the technology to enhance it. So yeah, like yeah, I absolutely agree with that.
Good. I'm glad we're on the same page because, it's one of those things. I'm a being a 30-year veteran in the construction industry, like, again, I started at the very, very bottom. I was the poor carpenter's apprentice trying to just make enough money to get the bills paid,
Hmm.
and kind of worked my way through. Ended up being a GC for a long time, and then now I'm on the technological side of it, and I'm concerned. And my concern is this: we're entering into the age of AI. And I spoke with Hugh Seaton, was a couple weeks ago. I spoke with him, and smart guy, and he and I kind of agreed on, if we don't if we're trying to move into AI, it's not immediate, and everything that we do is going to be based upon what kind of data that we're feeding it, right? So let's just kind of pie in the sky. If I'm developing some sort of agentic AI model for, let's say, scheduling, you know, well, if I'm going to keep going down that path of critical path method, I might be teaching it a lot of mistakes. I'm not teaching it how to look for bottlenecks. I'm not teaching it where to find flow. I'm only teaching it to look where this maybe supply chain is going to break down if I don't get this material in time, and I can't get that material there to make this happen.
Hmm.
I'm not saying that there's no value in it, but I'm saying is, if we go down one path, there's a lot of money going to be spent. And if you go down one path, that's a lot of money spent in a path that may not be our best result if we're really trying to do something better for the industry. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wanted to kind of, get your thoughts on that, because we're in the age of AI. We just are. It's coming. There's nothing going to stop it. And I wanted to know, you know, just even from your personal standpoint, or just kind of where you're working right now, are your thoughts about how that moves forward? Or is it making any waves in your industry?
Yeah, I do hear about it a lot. I got my eyes on it a lot. It is here. It will be a part of our lives. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I mean, that's very clear. And it will be part of construction, the way we build. We will build with AI. AI is not going to build for us, but we build with it. How that looks, I think it's going to touch every part of what we do. It's going to be big in the supply chain. Um, that's already happening. A company that is doing that right now and doing it pretty well, in my opinion, is Crane. They're doing that to optimize, pretty much replace your procurement log, um, optimize your supply chain, organizing all the material and information, so it shows up on time, um, helps you identify issues so your material doesn't show up late or too early, so you can achieve flow, maintain your flow on site.
Right.
Um, Scheduling will be done the same way, and like process. Um, I foresee that you'll dump all your information into this big pool of data, and like you'll put your drawings in there, you'll put your specs, you'll put the process of how you frame a wall, and how you'll put the legit process of how you do that, and it will kind of optimize everything around the process, so that
Yeah.
I don't know how you do. I'm not a tech guy. I'm just a kind of forward thinking project manager, but
Right.
um
Well, I
yeah,
feel that goes into how you manage your data. Again,
yeah,
the biggest thing that AI feeds on, the only thing that it feeds on, is information, your data stream, right? And it's always been garbage in, garbage out. Same thing as mathematics, anything like that. If you put in garbage, you're going to get out garbage. So, the example of, make sure your foundational data is good and it's accurate and it's accessible, right? Uh, so that's one of the things when you start talking about that, start talking about framing a wall. There's several steps, that go into framing a wall.
yeah,
And there's several personalities that go into framing a wall. So this is one of the things that we talk about, utilizing data. Well, data is localized. Um, I think I brought it up the other day. I was talking to Josh Wisnant from
mm,
Roger. And
Oh yeah.
we both agreed it's kind of like, hey, you're not going to take a Texas road crew that's out here building roads and drop them into North Dakota and expect them to be the best in the business. It's just not going to happen. Your data is going to be localized. And so I think it's important for these companies to understand that just because a certain project management software has an AI application does not mean that that data that they're carrying has the information that you need for your location and your teams and your people. Your data is going to be very, very personalized for your staff or your people, because we all know we've got some rock stars in our business, right? There's some people that just do amazing work, and you're like, how did you? I don't know how you get that done, but you did great, right? And then
Yeah.
you've got other teams that don't do so great and they're held up to a certain standard. Well, you've got to set those standards within your company. And again, when I start thinking about if I'm going to schedule assets, I'm going to be looking for, who's bringing material in. I'm going to look for the rock stars, right? And I want to be able to kind of align those stars to get that flow that you're talking about going,
Hmm. Yeah, it is your data. I'm seeing that and feeling that a lot.
right?
I think people are paying attention to their data now and how they take care of that, manage it, optimize it.
Right. And I think again, it may be again, if it's helping us build, it's for the folks that are out there building it, but it's also an assurance policy. I won't say it's an insurance policy, but I'll say it's assurance policy for the executives and the ownership of seeing, hey, there is this in place. Your AI is helping here, here, and here, and this is how we do this. This is our process. But I did want to talk about that because we were talking about the Empire State Building, and that kind of thing. Do you think that this feat can ever be done today? I mean, we kind of touched on it lightly, but I think it's difficult. But with new technology and the things that we're going to talk about, what's your thoughts on that for the future? Maybe a build like this.
Yeah, I do. I want to say that I think it can be done again, something miraculous. I mean, I've seen small phases. There are the project that goes really, really well. I don't know if it's something as quite as like the tallest building in the world in 410 days, but systemically right now in the construction industry, I'm not sure if we're built like that because of all the risk that's on contractors now, all the risk that's on designers now that are just pushed to us, and all the lawyers that are involved now. You really need to optimize the whole, which is another lean principle. What they had back then, everyone was not thinking about themselves. They were thinking about the big picture, the group, that mission, that goal. Like I said, the bureaucracy was stripped away. I don't know if we have that now. I don't know if we have that level of openness and transparency. We can there are in some ways localized or in our silos we have that, but it's rare to find that just open book and openness in today's environments. And now I've never done an IPD project. I've not done one yet, an integrated project delivery, where essentially, I don't know if you've heard of that, but that changes the business model and it creates one contract that, includes everyone, the owner, the contractor, the designer, and even your key trade partners. Everyone's
Okay.
in this one unified contract, which is it's an impressive model. And there's shared incentives, there's shared savings that go to for meeting your goals, for meeting your milestones, for achieving things like under budget. That's all defined at the beginning of the project. Hey, what are our incentives that we need to chase? And if we hit these, then we make more money, you know? And so there's like things like that. Those are really cool, and there's been a lot of success stories like that.
So
But
I see you're giving me an education there because that's the first time I've heard about that. I've heard people talk about it, but I didn't realize there were still some folks that are there are folks now that are executing that type of contract.
there are, yeah, Leighton, my company is doing, we've done a couple of those. Um, a lot of healthcare owners and systems that I know, they're starting to do these.
Right.
They're by far they're rare. They're not like a standard or an everyday thing, but it does take to rebuild the whole business model of how an owner delivers a project, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a much different environment. And people, once they do what I've heard is once you do an IPD project, like it's hard to go back out of it. It's like a different, you're on like, it's like building on a different planet, you know?
Right.
It's
Yeah.
crazy.
I can certainly
So
see the benefits to it. I mean, again, the herding of cats when you start talking about, subcontractors that weren't involved in the original, they're not really involved in the contract. They're standing outside the contract trying to get their contract executed and get their scope of work done, but yet they weren't involved in original talks about scope of work and things like that. I think I think that's invaluable, having the people that are actually going to be out there, on the ground involved in that and having incentive, right? Having the ability to have some input into the design. I don't know how many arguments and tense conversations I had with engineers, between the engineer and the subcontractor, when they start calling out different things like this is not right, this is not right on the design, we need to fix this, or we need to change this, and why didn't you guys see this earlier? So I
yeah,
totally understand that.
think about this, Robert. It's like if we were to go build an Empire State Building today, we'd see a contract. What would be at the end of that contract? There'd be liquidated damages,
Yeah.
right? You've heard of those? It's
Yes.
if you're late, it's $10,000 a day and it increases over time for how
Yeah.
many days and weeks you're late. That's the
Yeah.
standard right now. So
Right.
right now you're offering, hey, let's get into this project, but there's a big hammer at the end if you're late.
Yeah. Instead
In an
of being an incentive.
in an IPD project, there's instead of the hammer, there's a carrot.
Right.
Okay, there's no liquid damages. This is what we can win. This is what we can make more money on. So
Yeah.
imagine the culture change there. It it's 100% different. And I would imagine that the Empire State Building they probably didn't have incentives. They probably didn't have liquidated damages. They just had a drive to win, build something great, get work, come out of depression, all that stuff. So
Yeah.
take
I think
pride.
I think the amazing part of that story is, and you're right, they didn't have a liquidated damages clause or anything like that off with the subcontractors, I'm sure. It was more about let's get this building open so we can, create more jobs, have a place for, people to rent. Now, obviously, there is the story behind the empty state building, which it did sit a bit dormant. There were several floors unleased for quite a while, but over time that did correct itself.
Hmm.
But the interesting part is, they got it done so that you could start up business, which is one of the biggest complaints right now from an ownership side, is where he's like, man, if I got to wait on this, I'm losing dollars for the amount of time that it's taking you, or it's gone over, and those types of things. So that's why I was interested in this whole idea of, talking about lean and talking about the methodology that we are rapidly needing to lean towards, no pun intended, because of the onset of AI. It's almost like when I think about AI and I think about using these large language models, how we train them will probably be the most important thing that we do when we're working with it in our company, right? What we're training them for. It's almost like a new employee or a new laborer or a new skilled carpenter. How we train them to run our processes basically is the bottom line of how our company operates. And I feel like if we're going down the CPM method, it's possibly the wrong way to go, because kind of like you stated,
Yep.
how we structure our contracts, how we, structure our schedules, all the things that we're doing, and we start training these kind of autonomous agents to do this work, well, it's going to affect us later on down the road. And that in itself is a whole nother idea of risk management. What is the
Yeah.
risk management involved in setting up large language models and getting that going, you know?
Yeah, that's a big question there.
I
What's
know.
the second order impact?
Right. I think big questions, and it's kind of like how, that's why I think it's important to have these conversations and take the example of an Empire State Building and go, hey, we really did it right on this one. So why aren't we trying to model that every time? And I'm just saying there is the reason we're not modeling that concept because 5 people died. Is that's crazy? That's crazy talk. You don't do that. There's a lot of things that went right, and it's so sad that those 5 folks or whoever in however things happened at that time. That's sad, but you cannot discount it for what it was. And I think it's important that we take that into the new age
Hmm.
of building. I think it's
Yeah.
important.
Yes, absolutely. You raise a good point about AI and how it's needs to be trained because that's going to dictate a lot right there.
Yeah, especially for an industry like construction that has always tended to be very, very hesitant about what its next step is when it comes to technology. Like,
Yeah.
you know, there's a ton of companies still on spreadsheets. Um, for some companies that is technology, but that's not going to last in today's market.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable in that effort.
Yeah. Have you read the book Built to Fail, Robert?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I was just at the PPI symposium in December and got the chance to meet with him, chat with him a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. It
That's
would, I feel like it'd just be right up your alley. So,
Yeah, no,
and it is.
yeah, I've read it. Yeah, it's definitely up my alley. Yeah, I think for my thought is, like I said, I've spent plenty of time on the ground, 30 years in the business, and pulled out my hair. Luckily, I still have some left. I've pulled out my hair long enough, dealing with that kind of thing, and for me, it was when I got into the technology side, is how do I find solutions for builders now that's going to last 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the road, something that will make a difference. And so then I started looking into, lean technology because again, I'd been working off of, critical path method and those types of things for years. Right. And
Yeah.
never thought about that other side. But then things like operational science make sense to me. Right. Like what is the structure of how do you perform this task, and what's the best way to perform that task, and kind of what's the optimum time that it should have, and of course then the idea about getting materials delivered just on time. There's another concept that kind of would blow everybody's mind because they're used to seeing these stacks of drywall laying all over the place and they're in the way of everything. You got to move them 3 different times because it's too tight of a space. That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
But yet we've known these examples, just like the Empire State Building example. We have these examples of this, and yet we don't. A lot of folks don't apply them, and I think that's sad. And I think it's going to be a big issue in the future.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's next on your agenda, Kyle? Are you going to write another book, or you gonna what's going on? I know you have a newsletter, and of course, I'm going to copy all this if you want to. Like I said, I'm going to say get your book. If you're an upcoming project manager, or if you're one that's working, that book is fantastic, and it really outlines a lot of great points. But what's next on the agenda? I think the newsletter and more.
Yeah, I'm gonna continue a newsletter. I'm gonna continue the newsletter. Book, yes, but probably not for a couple years. I got another one in mind, but I think I'll work on a project management course next. That's been the audience has kind of been asking for that, and I think there's a need for that. So I want to explore that, project management, leadership, these principles, these things that we kind of just talked about, how to, infuse these and bake these into your processes so that, you can achieve better outcomes. But yeah, I love the newsletter, so I'm going to definitely continue to put a lot of effort in that. And and continue building my projects, trying to make a dent that way.
Well, before we close out, if anybody has any questions, if you don't mind, I'm going to put your LinkedIn contact and that kind of stuff in the description, and folks can reach out to you via that way. Obviously, I'll try to guide them to your newsletter and your book that you have. And if you haven't read the book, it is the No Bullshit Project. Well, it doesn't really say that, but it does say it. But
Yeah.
anyway, I will recommend this book to everybody. Thank you for taking some time with me today. Just a few minutes out of your day is fantastic. Again, if I just thought that the Empire State Building is a prime example of what we can do, no matter what the time is. And I would just wanted to talk with you about that. So I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, this is a great conversation. Thanks, Robert, for having me.